Belarus anti-Putin faction is fighting the Russian ruler. Belarus's president, Alexander Lukashenko, is Putin's closest supporter, and the two are scheduled to meet this week. The Russian president arrived in the country for his first working visit in more than 3 years. The tour has fueled speculation that Russia is plotting a new strike on Ukraine. Because of the restrictive policies of the Belarusian government, gathering political opinions in the country is difficult. However, an underground network group has declared its support by committing acts of sabotage. This week, Mr. Lukashenko called his Russian counterpart and himself co-aggressors and the worst and most toxic people in the midst of weeks of conjecture about Belarus's role in Ukraine's war. On the other hand, Putin denied pressuring Belarus to join the battle. Mr. Lukashenko further implied that if it hadn't been for his partnership with Russia, Belarus could have found itself in a similar scenario to Ukraine today. The prolonged affinity and allyship of the 65-year-old with Putin has resulted in officials, activists, hackers, and citizens seeking to carry out a revolution. According to ABC News, some Belarusians are putting together a secret plot to hinder Putin's activities in Ukraine because they feel a loss for Russia will solidify their freedom. Mr. Lukashenko, whose re-election in 2020 was contested since it was not recognized by the EU, is dubbed the last tyrant of Europe by the anti-regime network and many of those who oppose him. The Belarusian president, who has served in power for more than 2 decades, said he had won 80% of the 2020 election, but sanctions were later placed on the country after the outcome was criticized as gross electoral fraud and a human rights violation. Hundreds of thousands of non-violent protesters came to the streets in the months that followed, and the Belarusians did not accept the outcome silently. In fact, when 250,000 people assembled in Minsk, it was the country's largest single demonstration in history. Lukashenko has repressed any opposition throughout his long dictatorship. His 2020 election foe Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya is presently living in exile in Lithuania, and Belarus is one of the worst countries for media control. It is also hard to determine the political preferences of the public through polls, as many do not want to submit anti-Lukashenko answers owing to the fear factor. However, according to a poll of 2,000 Belarusians aged 16 to 64 undertaken by the Center for East European and International Studies, at least 700,000 individuals must have protested. Another poll between November and December 2020 discovered that Belarusians' attitudes toward Russia were ambiguous. While 43% see Russia as the greatest threat to Belarus' territorial integrity, an overwhelming majority of 86% see Russia in a very positive light. The opinion of Russians was even higher, at 96%. However, this was substantially less for Russian President Vladimir Putin, who had a 60% majority. It is crucial to note, however, that this survey was done less than 3 months before Putin declared war on Ukraine on February 24. Since the start of the war, certain Belarusians, and their Russian equivalents, have faced unfair prejudice due to their respective governments' antics, with pupils apparently being denied admission to colleges. However, while Mr. Lukashenko's alliance with Putin continues unabated, the fate of those who disagree appears to be far from ending. For more information, please subscribe to my channel.